1 minute, so we start. Okay. Anyway, good morning to all. Sorry for my delay. I'm Carlo Scivoloni from Italian Environmental Agency, where is also located the Geological Survey. I'm not in the Geological Survey anymore, but anyway, I manage all the information system in our organization, also the geological part. My background is in the geomorphological apply, so in some way the topic of this morning is quite related to my background. We have 3 speakers. The first one have more space than the other 2, but anyway, we try to start and we remain more time. At the end, we have time for more questions. I just remarks to be sharpened, so you have more or less 22 minutes plus some questions, and the other 15 minutes plus some questions. We start in just 1 minute. And I ask to start with the first presentation, played by, not by Robert Thomas. Apologize for the absence of Robert, but Giacomo Martirano. Is presented by using INSPIRE for improving cross-sector interoperability of data and damage and loss related to the natural hazard. So it's more related to a loss damage estimation use case. So,
okay.
Start.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, Giacomo Martirano is the speaker of this morning.
As Carlo is pointing out, this work has been jointly prepared by Robert Thomas of the JRC and by 2 external consultants. One is me, Giacomo Martirano, and the other is Matthew Harrison. As the title says, we show a practical example of, we hope, the benefits using INSPIRE for improving cross-sector interoperability of data on damages and losses related to natural hazards. And you can immediately start thinking which is the relation, because in the natural hazards data specification, information about damages and losses is missing. So the outline, we will introduce the aim of this pilot project, the legislative framework, which is very relevant because we have tried to harmonize 2 different legislative framework. One is INSPIRE and another one is a more thematic one. The approach that we've taken for the pilot, the phases of this pilot project, which was divided in 4 phases. The first one was the pilot scoping, then the data model extension, a classical exercise of extending INSPIRE core data specification. Then the data harmonization, assuming as a target data model these extended XSD that have been produced. And then some thoughts about a good feedback that we got from experts in the domain. I'm not at all an expert, a thematic domain expert, so any kind of specific questions should be raised to my colleague Robert at the JRC. But we will try to see how the feedback that we got from thematic experts in the domain were very encouraging to reuse the results achieved in a real life use case scenario, and then some conclusions. The aim of the pilot was to harmonize data, services, of course, requirements of 2 relevant legislative and technical frameworks, and in order to improve current practices in the field of natural hazard risk assessment. The legislative framework is, from one side, obviously, the INSPIRE directive, and in the particular case, the technical guidelines related to natural risk zones data specifications. And then the so-called thematic legislation, which was a decision on a union civil protection mechanism jointly prepared by the European Commission, but with a huge consultation with member states, which produced at the end a guidance document for recording and sharing disaster damage and loss data produced in 2015, in which, as you can imagine, in this document, are contained the so-called data modeling requirements, which were not at all formalized according to the INSPIRE paradigm, and then the exercise came out. And then there are also these international activities and framework, to name some of them, some social benefit areas like disaster resilience of the GeoGeos initiative, the Sendai indicators, sustainable development goals indicators, and so on. So it's a big legislative framework around setting the context for this pilot. The approach that we taken was to demonstrate the added value of using INSPIRE in a thematic domain where data management is mature, because you can imagine how in the civil protection area the data flows without thinking about INSPIRE. They are operational, real-time, so mature. In this sense, we use the adjective mature. So you can imagine, I don't know how many of you had experiences in trying to use INSPIRE in such a domains. You have some maybe forgetting for a while for the technical challenges. I think that one of the biggest challenges to open a discussion with experts, domain experts already happy generally with the data flows they are running in an operational way, so they are looking at INSPIRE as with a bit of suspect. Let me really understand which can be the benefits, because I'm happy with how I'm working here. To engage domain experts and practitioners in a definition, implementation, and evaluation of a real-life use case in order to already identify a real use case scenario. And to build, on the other side, a flexible solution that enables reuse in various scenarios, because as we will see, the assessment and recording of damages and losses data can be done according to different methodologies defining different sets of indicators. And if for this first exercise we based our work of extending the data model, assuming as a source data model the indicators and the methodology defined in the guidance document of the European Commission, there are other initiatives like the Sendai framework defining other type of indicators and methodologies to assess damage and loss data. Some details of this. This was, you see here? This was our reference, the so-called source data model, because in any data harmonization process, you have your source world and then your target world. And in order to, when you discover that your target world is missing so you need some extension of some INSPIRE core data scheme, you have to start looking into details of your so-called source data model. And this picture with a few written text is the source data model. So no UML models, no XSDs, no other type of documentation. This one, but in this case, quite comprehensible, because you see here the affected element, which in the formalization of the model will become a feature type, a new class, and then with the indicators taking into account damage, human loss, economic loss, human loss directly affected, indirectly affected, economic loss, direct loss, indirect loss, intangible costs, and so on, with some declination of more information. So the phases, the first phase started in December 2015 ended in April 2016 was the scoping of the data harmonization, identification of the main problematic parts. The second phase ended at the end of last year was the creation of the common data model, extending the INSPIRE natural risk zone data model, producing an XSD valid. And the third phase ended in March 2017 was related to the data harmonization, transforming a sample national dataset containing natural observed events, entering now into the INSPIRE vocabulary, and related damages and losses, according to the common data model developed in the previous phase, and deploying and configuring the remaining INSPIRE components, meaning metadata and network services. Last phase ended in July was the application of the results to identify use cases in which benefits of the selected approach could be gained. Without entering into the details, just to give you a snapshot, you see here the INSPIRE natural risk zones core data model on this part here. And then the so-called damage and loss data extension on the right, bounded by the dashed line, in which there is a new feature type on top, which is called affected element, linked to an association with the observed event, and then a lot of new data types and code lists, which are showed on the right. This was the first result of our pilot. Then, these are more or less the workflow that I showed before. Just to give you more details, we put some attention when in the step 4, we used the AIL Studio open source software to make the data transformation. And among different mapping or encoding options, we put a lot of attention in the usability of the data of the GML files in QGIS. Also to start a dialogue with a thematic domain expert to whom we presented our results. Used to work with classical WebGIS interfaces or web application interfaces. Then metadata creation with INSPIRE metadata editor and deployment of the network services with the full test with degree, and then some tests still running with GeoServer. This is the result this is a snapshot of QGIS showing the sample dataset was provided by the Lombardy region, providing a certain number of floods occurred in 2014, and relevant damages and losses data related to each of these events. And in these, you cannot detect anything from the room, but in this box, you see the results of the attributes of the encoded information transformed according to the target data model, in which, through a proper ID referencing, each damage and loss is related to the flood event that occurred and determined the data and loss, and they are the two data sets have been in this way interlinked. The last phase was the identification of these use case, which was done with the support of experts in the civil protection, who basically told us the following: your results are of some interest for us, and we will tell you why. They said, because sometimes or always the recording activity of damages and losses is time-consuming, effort-consuming, is made via an iterative process with a lot field activities. But in order to get some initial rough and not necessarily precise assessment, having the possibility of comparing damages and losses produced by similar events in similar areas with similar infrastructures and assets, so-called assets in the surrounding, could be a useful starting point to start to kick off the traditional recording activity of damages and losses in the let's say in the traditional way. And when we discovered that this was assessed as an interesting use case for the domain experts, we were happy to have produced results which can be easily fit into this use case. So the following points have been analyzed during the definition of this use case: the analysis of essential data needed and their categorization, definition of possible data-related scenarios based on the availability of different datasets. There are a couple of slides more to show this. Identification of issues related to different conditions of related to accessibility, interoperability, and quality of the data needed for this assessment, and then application and evaluation of the approach taken for each issue identified. These are the four, you see in these simple metrics on the first column have been identified with a civil protection expert the three main categories of data needed for make such kind of assessment. Data on past events, updated data on exposed elements, and data on damages and losses of affected elements by past events. These are three different datasets, generally produced, maintained, and collected by not necessarily the same organization, so the burden can be there. According to so 4 different scenarios have been identified in order to, based on the availability or non-availability of these 3 categories of data. There is, of course, the scenario 5 where no data is available, so was disregarded. And the scenario 6 when all data available, which is the ideal case, that was exactly the case corresponding to the experiment that we made. For each of these scenarios, issues have been identified, all of them introducing some weakness in this quick assessment, because if you have no updated data related to the road infrastructure that may be changed in the last few years, and your last updated dataset is an old one, or you have not the updated dataset of the governmental services there. So each of these scenarios introduces some drawback. And after having identified for each of these scenarios the issues related to the non-availability of data, of quality data having a good quality, being accessible, being reusable, being interoperable, the results that I showed in the map with the sample data shows how these issues can be solved. So, concluding, it was demonstrated that applying INSPIRE in the field of loss and damage recording can improve the accuracy of this quick estimation, and the maximum benefits are gained when the approach is applied to all data categories. In the iterative recording process, the use of the common data model facilitates future estimations. Imagine, for instance, for the field work taken according to the different level of severity of the event is taken by technicians belonging to the municipality or to the regional level or to the up to the higher national level. If they are using the same data model, then the processing of the data collected on the field can be much easier. And then, last but not least, the flexible approach taken allows reuse for different estimation methodologies, like these and indicators, because in the extension, the data model extension that we provided now can be easily added, having foreseen some multiplicity for some of the data types. If a new methodology if we want to introduce to model new methodologies taking into account different indicators for the recording of data and for the damages and loss data, the model is almost there and you need very few adjustments. Thank you for your attention, and I'm ready for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Giacomo. We have time for some questions.
Thanks for the interesting presentation. You spoke about the extension of the INSPIRE model. Did you change the registry or extend it, or did you make a change request, or how did you make that become a part of the INSPIRE model?
Okay, let me go back a while to show. Okay, even though it's not clear, in the we had the in the yellow box, these three new code lists have been they have been defined, taking into account that this was a pilot in his producing some prototype work. For the time being, these three new code lists have been defined, and the idea is to create, because it has not yet been created, but reusing experiences that we gained in other pilot projects, we made a new instance of the registry software provided by the ARENA and ULF staff, creating when all these new code lists will be properly registered, following basically the guidelines of the generic conceptual model of INSPIRE.
Okay. There is another question.
Hello, thank you very much for your good presentation.
Thank you.
So I guess a core data model works. And I have two questions. Will the results from the pilot be used to compare the estimated losses with the next Article 4 reporting under Floods Directive, where we have to report about damages related to past events? And the next question is, will these results be integrated in the Copernicus rapid mapping services, because they have a similar approach?
I think these are, I'm sorry to provide the same questions to both your short answers to both your questions. These are two interesting follow-up that we will take into account, because the activities were recently terminated for this first phase of the project, and now looking at the funding opportunities internal to the GRC to provide extra funding to a second phase of the pilot, in which we would like to reach out more and more. Reuses of these results are very welcome, and definitely the two that you mentioned. The use case that we defined at the end did not have any application yet. It was just it was a sort of ex post demonstration. Maybe it's a too strong word, but feedback that we got that the approach taken can be used in real life scenarios. So many other are welcome.
Maybe I can add to that.
Please, Annette.
Working in the emergency management service of Copernicus. So thanks for the presentation. It's very interesting, and I'm very happy to see that that this work now.
Yeah.
Basically, for the first time, I mean, I have talked to Robert in the past when we basically discovered that the model that as it existed was not fitting the purpose of the rapid mapping, for example, because it was missing all this damage assessment part, because it was tuned to hazard risk mapping, so which is a different scope, so to say. So, and I think we will also now look into actually talking more.
Now the next step is to put on the INSPIRE public sandbox all the model and the results and then the services and whatever.
I think because the service, the rapid mapping service is a great playground for testing that, I think so.
Okay.
Okay, thank you again.
I have to apologize because I have unfortunately another presentation now, but I will come back for the end of the session. So please apologize
come
me.
back for other questions. But anyway, thank you again and to Giacomo for the presentation. Well, now it's time for the second presenter. It's Mauro Casaburri from the Planetech Italia. He'll present Rheticus, Copernicus and INSPIRE for Earth surface monitoring. So it's more related to the Copernicus and the satellite images use. Okay.
Okay, thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm Mauro Casaburri from Planetech Italia, and I'm here to show you an example on how a private company can make business from Copernicus or from also, of course, INSPIRE. And I want to show you this platform that called Rheticus. It's a platform, cloud platform that provide geoanalytics information as services. Elaborating big open satellite data from Copernicus mission and combining it with vectorial data from INSPIRE, of course. But first of all, I just want to briefly introduce my company. It's Planetech Italia. It's an SME based in the south of Italy, involved in these fields: Earth observation, spatial data infrastructure, location-based system, and space software for software on board satellite missions. And he belongs in a Planetech group with Planetech Hellas. It's the twin of Planetech, based in Greece, in Athens, and two university science spin-off from Rome University and the University of Bari. The last one is involved in this Rheticus algorithm for processing satellite SAR data. Rheticus is a cloud-based platform, so accessible by web, and provide this geoanalytics as services to monitoring Earth surface and also other kind of disaster of the surface, like displacement. That it's a service that monitoring the landslide, subsidence, and the infrastructure stability. Marine, it's a service to monitoring, of course, the quality of the water, seawater, and algae bloom and fishing area. Land, that wants to provide a service to monitoring the burned area or the land cover, so how the area effect of burn, fire, change the use, and also the urban dynamics. It's a service to monitoring the change of the urban area and it island and so thing. But these services are providing in a continuously mode. So if we observe the area of interest, we often with the continuous mode, daily, weekly, or monthly, we can observe this area and we can check and manage what's happening in this area. I want to try to, on my own risk, to make a live demo of the website, just to give you an idea on how this platform works. Rheticus, if you go on the website, you can see this interface that show you the main access to these services, displacement, marine and wood fire, and the urban dynamics. And here below, you can see this authorized distributor that cover all over the world. As you can see, we monitoring a global scenario. And in this case, I just want to show you how works the displacement. So if you go in the and click on displacement, you can, of course, view a map. I think that most of our applications show you a map. But in this case, we can see this map. It's a cover of a large number of points, and we can thematic these points picking in red, green, or blue. These points are permanent scatters, we call it, and we can catch, after we can see how, we can catch the points that are on the surface, and we measure the movement of these points in terms of millimeters. We measure the difference of the distance in time. So it's a velocity, and the velocity is in terms of millimeters of displacement per year. And so we can see here that on this area, there is too many red dots in this place and also in this. But it's not because there is some landslide or disaster events that are coming up, but it's just because this is the front water, so it's subject of the movement, it's normal, and also here we have a solar farm, and it's quite normal that there is some assessment on that. But if we go and check here, I try to zoom in, here we can see that there is something that's wrong, could be wrong, because here we have this area that can be effect of some displacement. And if you go to identify this information, clicking on these dots, you can see the measurement that we do in a continuous way and in automatically way. And we can see here that from October 2014 till July 2015, there is a movement with a velocity of about 50 millimeters down from the first measure. So something is moving so slowly that you cannot catch without this kind of algorithm. And this is important because too many disasters, like landslides, starting very, very slowly. And you can catch and you can, know that something is wrong in that area. And now we correlate this information. Here we can see also with the rainfall, precipitation of millimeters of water per days, so per month, so we can exactly know what's happening when it's raining in that time, in that place. If you can see the map, here, right, maybe there is some subsidence. No one wants to build some house here. But is not this the problem. The problem is that below there is an infrastructure. This is the highway. And maybe something can happen. Well, the application here show you there is some filter. You can move the filter to know the currents or how the accelerator to filter the points. But I want to just briefly quickly go in another area for another use case. Here, the company that managed the highway in Italy was our customer and asked to monitor this area. And in fact, we can see here that this infrastructure can be a fact of some displacement, because here we highlight that this infrastructure is moving down, and you can see here that here there's something that is wrong, something is not going well in here. It's very stable, so this is not a problem, but here can be a problem, and so in this way we can catch and we can monitor this area. But back to the presentation. before, as I told you, before something happened, we can monitor this land. How we do that? Oh, we do that through this interferometric analysis. So, the Rheticus can process a large number of data, satellite data. You know, Copernicus with the Sentinel mission can acquiring the same zone every 6 days. And so we can have a large number of satellite image on the same area. If we can combining and compare this information, we can have with the interferometric, we can have a measurement of what's happening, and we can derive this value-added information that we can use. Because now, starting with this information, we can monitoring not only landslide, but also tunnels, mines, what happened when some infrastructure or some mines that we are building in a place, what happened in the surrounded area. Another experiment we have done, well, experiment, not we sell this service to a French company that create this geological farm for energy. I'm technical, not so expert in this like Carlo, but and they want to monitor what's happened in the surrounded area, and there's some displacement in the surrounded area. Also for dams or the bridge and so on. But a nice use case that I want to show you was done for Metropolitana Milanese, that it's a company that manages the water network of Milan. And these companies buy the Rheticus services to monitoring the loss of the tubes under the ground of the cities. Because there is this phenomena that called piping, that when a tube in a network lost water, you can see that something on the surface of the road is happening. And in this way, you can see in this picture, now it's too late because we have this hole. But, and the hole was caused by this water loss. And so they buy this service for all the Milan city to better manage the maintenance of the network. Because, well, we starting from the point that we can measure and manage, we combining this information with the tube water network, and we can put the color red, the tube that could be a fact of some pipe and water loss. And so we have this map, and they can easily manage the maintenance. That, well, if you see the tube colored red, doesn't mean that the tube is a fact of the water loss, but maybe, probably, something doesn't work well there. So we can create this geoanalytics application, and they can manage and know exactly where to go to discover with other precise instruments the loss. So we have seen, I just conclude with these two slides. The first one wants to show you how the Rheticus works. Rheticus is an automatic platform that continuously provides information. And so it's based on this workflow that catch and the data from the Copernicus data hub, scientific hub, that automatically catch the information, the data, the satellite data of the area that we want to monitor, process this information, create these displacement targets and points, combining this information with the vectorial data from INSPIRE, for example, like the water network, and provide this geoanalytics as information as services. The next step could be very nice for a private company if INSPIRE, like Copernicus, can provide with the hub in a continuous way, always fresh information in following the data specification. Because in this way, we can not put this information by hand, but we can conclude and have this workflow really automatic. So if someone wants to subscribe a service for this area, the human acts on the workflow are very, very less. That's all, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Mauro. We have time for some questions. Someone? Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for the presentation. I didn't understand, is it always digesting all the Sentinel-1 data, or are you only acting on demand of a user to analyze a specific area? Or
Well, we concentrate our attention on a specific area. We don't catch all the satellite data for all the globe because it was very expensive or also not so easy. But what we do is to catch the data for the area that you can subscribe some agreement. I want to monitoring the area around my, for example, some assurance by this service because they want to assure some buildings. But they want to be sure that the buildings that are assurance are not affected of some displacement. So they say, okay, I want to subscribe these services on this area. These are the coordinates of the bounding box. You can do that. We concentrate our attention on that, catching the data from the satellite mission, elaborate, throw out what we don't need more because we don't want to accumulate all the data we are talking about continuously for years. We have acquisition every 6 days, so it's a very large amount. So we use what the information we need. Then we store the right information, so the dot information for the displays and the movement in all the days, throw out this information, the satellite image on things, and combine this information with other information to have a new added value.
thank you.
Small question, okay.
Hi, Mauro. Thank you. Maria Cabello from Spain.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Well, I was wondering, as far as I understood, you are talking about displacement in millimeters.
Yeah.
But the original information is meters, centimeters.
Yes.
Let's see.
But yes. But you don't.
So, up to which level of confidence you are able to say this point is this plus 1 millimeter?
Yeah.
So, which is the confidence of the?
This
because
is,
you mentioned that is using for a specific purpose, for insurance and these kind of things, and they need to know pretty well which is the accuracy of the data, and well, I would like to know.
Okay. Thank you for the question. Well, we don't measure and we don't base our measure on the satellite image resolution. We measure the difference between exactly 2 points that we catch on the ground, and this measurement is done by the radar image. So this is all based on this point that called permanent scatters. So we catch the permanent scatters. We know that this is, we can recognize that this it can be, I don't know, some you know, they put also permanent scatters, not natural, but as iron place on the side. But in this case, we can catch, for example, a corner of a building or maybe some point. We know that that point doesn't move. So we can catch this information, and often with other acquisition, we can measure always the same point. I don't mind about the resolution of the image. I just want to calculate this movement of the point. In fact, we don't calculate exactly how the point is not moving, but go down or up. But we can calculate the difference of the distance in time, so velocity. So we are calculating the velocity of the up and down of the points, and we can, in another algorithm, have also the coherence of the points. If you can see here, we can filter on the coherence. We can say, yes, we have a very last point that can say that this is exactly the same of the past measurement. So it's a difference of calculation. It's based on that.
Some other questions? If not, I have a couple of questions anyway. One is very simple, because I see that in the platform you will also integrate the Cosmos CAMAD satellite image. So is the platform able to archive also older campaign like Earth or some other campaign to have a in-time analysis like that?
At the moment, we base this platform to catch data from Copernicus mission satellite open. Well, we want to focalize on, of course, on open data, because we have this open satellite data. So we can, at the moment, we tune our algorithms on this Sentinel and data. So I don't know if in the future we can extend for other missions.
The other question is, because you're talking about, okay, the differences, but there are so many noise or differences when you analyzing the permanent scatter. I have a lot of experience on that, because of all the raw mass city as analyzed by me and my colleagues on that.
Good. Or we can
you are able to, in some way, the platform is able to permit to the user to refine the analysis, especially when you introduce external data, inspired data like geology or some hazard data that can be enrich your analysis anyway.
Of course. Yes, that's why in this, at the moment, in this use case, we combine the information with the rainfall, and in another use case, you have seen that we combine information with the water network. It depends on what you want to monitoring. If you want monitoring some landslide, maybe you can cross this information, and we have done. I don't know if it's in this case. Let me check. We have also put here some landslide maps, where we can. You can see here is coming up. You can see here that. This highway is intersect also from a landslide. Here we can see that I switch on the landslide layer, the IFI layer.
Well.
Maybe it's your data. So you can see that the highway is exactly in a landslide area, and we can here, of course, refine the information, combining with other data sources.
Okay.
Oh,
there's another question. Then we pass it to the third.
Good morning, everybody. Only a short question. Do you have problems in analyzing the satellite data over water surfaces?
No.
Thank you.
No. Well, the topic of today was on the Earth's surface. But if you go on Rheticus, I invite you to go to www.rheticus.eu, and you can see here the marine information, and we can have the same application to monitoring the chlorophyll or the temperature of the sea, the algae bloom, and so on. So here we have another workflow that processes another kind of data to extract this kind of information. So here we can see that are monitoring the South Italy, and well, you can hear play, and you can see that we can, in time by time, acquiring it and automatically monitoring also the water. As I said, we can now monitoring displays and water, wildfire, and urban dynamics. These are these four main services.
Okay, we pass to the last one. Thank you again to Mauro.
Okay, thank you.
And the last one is presented by Monica De Martino. Is the data value enhancement for Amazonia drainage data set. So we're changing, we go outside the Europe anyway. Monica,
Yes.
I remember you that you have 15 minutes.
Okay. I will stay in the time. Okay. So, good morning to everybody. I just introduced me and the colleague that is working with me. I'm Monica De Martino from the CNR in Italy, and here I want is a little bit different presentation that you used to hear this INSPIRE, because this is one just to show you a possible collaboration that we can have with other continent organization. And here I wanted to show you a preliminary activity that we are doing in a bilateral cooperation with Brazil, and in particular we have the Instituto Nacional Espacial di São Paulo, and Sergio Rosimesi here that has been in charge of this activity. So what I'm going to talk is they are a big institute, and part of them are working on drainage data set, and we just meet and know each other, and we have the idea to join our competencies, and we have to analyze how to enforce, how to enhance the value of the data that they produce. So just a fast overview about my talk. I wanted to introduce you the water issue that we are going to face, the TerraHydro system that the Brazilian Institute have developed, and the objective of our activity that aims to provide transparencies to the data of the data produced. And just the preliminary activity, because this activity started just since 3 months, and so I will show you some first activity and what will be in the next. So background, we have the problem of water. Water is, of course, fundamental limited resources, and we have just to think that the 60% of water is in the Free America, and most of them in the South America. And in Brazil, we have almost 28% of the water. So this is why this INPE is working a lot on drainage system. The other side, we have, of course, a lot of calamities due to the water, and something like flooding or anthropic actions. And there is a need of prompt response from the government that have, of course, to forecast, to recover environmental calamities. And territorial information, of course, are very important, and that should be accurate and updated. And among these, we are focusing on the drainage data set, where we means drainage network basin that are extracted from digital elevation model, and that, from our point of view, should be available on the web to all the community or all the stakeholders that have to face with such kind of calamities. So INPE is the National Institute for Space Research that is in Brazil. They have one of their mission, because it is a very large institute, is to produce and provide drainage data set to support decision activity and to cope with environmental issue. TerraHydro is one of the outcome. In particular, it is a distributed hydrological model system that extracts drainage network and watershed from every kind of region in the world, and it starts from them data. Here just you have the link to the institute where you can find more information. And our objective was, okay, we know the Brazilian colleague, we know that they have a lot of data, but they have no policy in order to make this really available, to shareable to all community. So from the other side, we've experienced working in an INSPIRE project. We know much more about how to manage such issue. And the overall objectives have been how to enforce the publication and the sharing of a drainage data set for researchers, for government, for private organization. And the idea is to leave the actual on-demand approach that they follow, because the data that they produce are free, the tool is free, and you can contact them for them. But of course, they need to have more visibility. And so the idea is to go in an overall transparent system that can supply information of South America, but of course also from other territory. And also we want to semantically integrate such data with other territorial data. So the activity that we are focusing is just focusing on three main keywords: drainage data set sharing, and reproducibility. That means that, okay, we have the data produced by INPE, but we can produce other data, and there is a sort of data processing pipeline that is quite not so simple. So the idea is to provide the knowledge about how to reproduce such data if you want to make a run may process with your data at home. And the other key words of our cooperation is just a common point of access. And we want, in the long-term vision, I mean not too long, of course, to create a point of access of interlinked geographic data as well as the metadata for them. The strategy that at the moment we apply is the open government data principle that should consider the implementation of a Brazilian law that is about the data transparencies. This is what the Brazilian government is pushing the institution to do. The other is the strategy of Brazil and the European Commission about free and open public access of information. And from the short experience that we could have on INSPIRE, and also with the cooperation or collaboration knowledge coming from all the people that I know working on INSPIRE, could be also interesting to see how could be INSPIRE meet the scientific and technological policy between Brazil and European Commission. So the approach that now we are following is just three main aspects. We want to provide data documentation with proper metadata for third-party application. And we wanted to consider some issue like the provenance of data, the quality of data, the versioning, and so on. And of course, we will consider the standard vocabulary like the CAT, the DQV for the data quality, and the PROV for the provenance. The other aspect is to think about to public the data on the web, and in particular as open data. And for this, we are trying to adopt the V3C recommendation about the best practice for special data on the web. And in the last, the main result should be a semantic integration. That means that to use semantic web technology to expose the data as linked data, but mainly to integrate them with other data. And this could be really bring a added value to the data produced by the Brazil Institute. So just a short schema. What we mean for data value enhancement is just to move from the creation of data that is the actual situation of the Brazilian Institute to provide information with the metadata to publish them, and then provide additional knowledge when we go to try to integrate this with other data where we need the semantics and we need the knowledge, the skill of the expert. So just some preliminary outcome, because I said that we just started this cooperation, and the first step is the data creation. So we are creating new data with the TerraHydro. And what really we want to do is also to provide a description of the workflow of the data processing pipeline that could be really useful in order to reproduce data from a third-party application. And we publish some South America and Amazon drainage dataset on the web according to open data principle. So this is the study area. Here we have the South American and the Amazon basin, and it is represented by a raster digital representation coming from SRTM, the digital terrain model, with a resolution of 30 meters. And the TerraHydro, what it does, as I said, is a hydrological system that can be used for GIS application. And he extracts the drainage network, basin delineation, drainage upscaling, and flooding area. We are focused now just on the first two kind of data. In particular, if we have to analyze the data processing pipeline to create, for example, the drainage network, we start from the digital elevation model. There is a problem of quality of digital elevation model. They have created some process to have a high quality digital elevation model that they call hydrological consistent dam. And then we have some data that are produced that are also important for creating, for example, when we study flooding or other aspect of water. And at the end, we have the drainage network that is provided in a raster, and then we transform this in a vector. The red box is what we are at the moment considering. So this is the example of drainage network and of water delimitation of the same area. And we pass now to the publication. We consider the open data principle, and we try to meet most of them, particularly for data that we have published. We have just follow the principle of accessible, to be machine processable. Data are available in more than one format. The data are available for everybody. it is free of license. There is that are available at the moment at the INPE server, and they are free. At the moment we use just a tab portal for the publication, but we can think then to create a own portal. So this is a step more after the publication in the direction of reproducibility of data. Here you have a representation where we use the PROV vocabulary to represent the data processing pipeline. In particular, in the white side, you have the provenience drainage network description, and in the gray one is the publication. The yellow, yes, this yellow are just data that we produce, and the rectangle box are the action that we have done, and these one are just the agent that have to produce the data. So this is a first attempt to provide a methodological description of the pipeline, and in the next we want to implement this in RDF to make this available and to store such provenance information as metadata. So this is just a view of what you can see if you go on the data hub, in particularly in a drainage network data set. Some metadata are provided. We already try to follow the DCAT vocabulary for describing some information, or the PROV for the provenience. This is the picture of the images of data about South America that is available at this address. The blue, clarity blue line are the drainage network. And this is the data about the Amazon basin. And we have just the red that is the contour of the basin of Amazon. So just to conclude, this is, as I said at the beginning, is a really preliminary activity that's coming from a starting collaboration with Brazilian Institute. The main idea from my point of size and is also to bring here the Brazilian colleague at INSPIRE to make his know more about the policy, about INSPIRE European principle for special data infrastructure, to know more about how we can add value to his data, because they have, from what I know, they have not really a policy for that. And in the next step, what we want to do is to provide more data on the web. That means also to create a point of access for this data. Probably we create a portal for their data. And, but more, we want to create a semantic relation of drainage data set with other kind of data. That could be data for climate changing or for agriculture study or whatever it could be. And in particularly from a research point of view, we will work more on workflow, and in particularly about how to manage the provenience information at the metadata level, and trying to exploit as much as possible the standard provided by the World Wide Web Consortium. So that's thank you, obrigado, and if you have questions.
Thank you, Monica. So we have time for some questions. More questions? No? Otherwise, I have
always one.
Some question arriving from the public? No? Okay. Have you to, but probably the question is more for Sergio than not you. Have you think about the possibility to use, or you have in Brazil, or you think about to using a SPI data model also to transform your data in this way. Yeah, to harmonize the data versus INSPIRE data model, or you have some standard South American level? Yeah, please, the microphone, anyway.
I'm not sure why what I can answer, because we are at the beginning of your operation. Our idea is to put your data for everyone.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but my question is related to, if looking to INSPIRE initiative, one of the main objects that we have is the harmonization of data and data contents to have a common layer. So you have some, like, this initiative?
I think that, for what I know, I don't think that they have some, let's say, policy like initiative like INSPIRE to follow. So this is why, speaking and discussing, we were thought to use some knowledge that we have. That could be not only from me, but from Giacomo, from you, from everybody that have a big experience of data harmonization from data model to metadata side. So this is a thing that could be interesting to apply INSPIRE also in other continent. That could be the added value also for INSPIRE.
So some.
If I can add something to explain the situation in Latin America.
Yeah, probably you know better.
So in Latin America, the difference between the SDIs is quite big. Some of them are well developed, some others are still working on that. There is an initiative that is GeoSur, and there is a person here, INSPIRE, that is following us from several years ago, and probably maybe you are interested in know a little bit more about.
Yeah, could be interesting.
They are looking at INSPIRE, but they are still far from the situation in Europe. That is that we are all working together and the world of DG are collaborating.
Yeah.
So maybe it's an opportunity for you. If he's still here, I can introduce you. I don't know.
Yes, I think that we can share more information later. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So some other questions regarding Monica's presentation? Otherwise, thank you again to Monica.
Thank you to you.
So we have a lot of time because we have just 3 presentations, and I see that Giacomo also came back in the room. So if they have some question also regarding the Mauro or Giacomo presentation, please, you are invited to ask something. Otherwise, thank you again to stay here and enjoy the rest of the conference. There are some questions? No questions? Okay, thank you again to the presenter and to the people to attend the session.